Beginning this Sunday, we're starting a new series here at Denton Bible Church. The five of us are for the first time teaching together, and we're going to be working through the book of Colossians. And we're excited for several reasons. First, we've never taught together. So it's going to be a new experience, I think, for us to have different speakers, but to work consistently through a book together. And we've been studying together since probably April through the book of Colossians. We've assigned our passages, and we're excited to encourage each other and also serve the congregation by working through this great book together. You know, the book of Colossians is one of Paul's last letters he writes. It's one of his prison epistles. He is an older believer at this point, and he is been in jail for a while writing this letter to believers who are really in a small town, much like Denton. They're about 100 miles from the big city in Asia Minor of Ephesus. And they're a bedroom community, and Paul's writing to this small church because they're having big issues. Not only is he in jail, but they are facing some pressures. They're facing a pull back to the past, that moralism is the way forward for these Christians. They're facing an encouragement to look to Greek philosophy and kind of that being progressive, that's where Christianity is meant to be found. And Paul's going to deal with those issues that really relate to Denton today. You were talking about that earlier, Jared, of just how those pressures are similar to what you see in our culture.
Yeah, and I think in some ways we'd say we don't have an issue of Greek philosophy in today's age, but it still, I think, directly pertains to our age today, especially maybe in the younger demographic. And Jake knows this maybe well over the college ministry, is the outside social cultural pressures that we face every day that I think oftentimes goes unrecognized or unnoticed. And what I love about the book of Colossians is Paul is continually elevating their worldview, their kind of perspective on life. You know, I think just in chapter 1, he elevates their thinking to, you have an inheritance not here on this earth, which we get caught up to, right? We get caught up in what job we do and what money we make and what are we doing here, but we have an inheritance in heaven. And he elevates our thinking from we've been transferred from this domain of darkness into the domain of light. And then he talks about the supremacy of Christ, that Christ is not just this good guy that is good for maybe on Sundays, or, you know, that kind of, you know, is a good idea or maybe something good to follow or a good example, but he's supreme. He's King of Kings. He's Lord of Lords over the macro and the micro and every nook and cranny of our life. He's over and he affects. And that's what I love about this book in particular, is it elevates our thinking that we really are conformed to the image of this world, but this book helps us to realize this world's not our home.
You mentioned the word worldview. Can somebody speak to what is a worldview, a biblical worldview?
Okay, so worldview is like glasses that we put on, and it's the lens through which we see everything. And so if you think about it this way, we're born with glasses that are fogged. And so what Christ does whenever he changes our worldview is that he cleans it off, so now I can actually see the world as I ought to see it. And so a biblical worldview, a Christian worldview, is seeing Christ comes in, doesn't just give me something to talk about or an ethic to live by, but it actually changes the way I see everything.
Mm-hmm.
So Jason, as Drew talks about worldview and kind of cleaning those glasses to be able to see clearly, I know you love the book of Colossians. You've taught it to our youth over the years. What are some of the things you love, and how is it that Christ cleans those glasses for us?
Yeah, it is one of my favorite books, and I have taught it a few times. And I think the reason it's one of my favorite books is kind of actually something else you said, Drew, and you started, Jared, talking about the supremacy of Christ, the preeminence of Christ, and all of that shaping the worldview. But even right after he finishes that section on the preeminence and some of that, and then he turns and he goes, and for you. And he starts this positional statement to me. The idea of that this is concerning me, that in light of who Christ is and what he's done, he's going to say things like, you're qualified. He's going to say, you're heavenly. He's going to say, you're burdened, you're reconciled, that these are things that are passive on my part, but given me because of Christ. And I think the reason I love the book is because even though there's so much depth and so much theology and richness in there, it's almost like he doesn't forget little old me. and how it impacts me because of who I am in Christ. And I think a seminary prof is who kind of started this in my life when I was in seminary. And he was asking the group of all us seminarians about what is it, you've heard you want to be identified in Christ, not in the world. And everybody's going, yeah, yeah. And then all of a sudden he turns it on us and he says, so somebody tell me what that means. What does it mean to be identified in Jesus? And a bunch of seminary guys couldn't answer the question. And he said, can I show you from Colossians 1 what it means? And I think from that moment on, I loved the book because of who Jesus claims me to be.
So, Jake, just as I listened to Jason talk about these great statements of who we are in Christ and what he's done for us, there's also an aspect of the Christian life of how we reflect that in our daily lives, in our family, and in our community. Maybe share a little bit, especially how this relates to college, young adults, and what you hope to highlight as you teach.
Absolutely. I think it's important to know that the Christian life doesn't end with salvation, that there's so many elements of salvation. We have justification, sanctification, and then glorification. And really, as you get into Colossians chapter 3, he says, if you have been raised with Christ, then we're to seek the things above. We're to set our minds. And he says we are to put on the things of the Spirit and put off the things of the flesh, that there is this growth process that we are to go into as believers because of what Christ has done. And that manifests itself, yes, in relationships, marriage, our relationship to authority, governing authorities that we have. And so it is an expansive, really, invitation from God to us and into the Christian life, that every aspect of our life permeates sanctification.
Well, hopefully you can see why it is that we're so excited to teach this book this fall. That this book, more than any of other of Paul's writings, is about Christ. And maybe you've heard that phrase, that the sufficiency of Christ, but you've never known what that means to your marriage or to raising kids or to living a Christian life on your street or in your workplace. This book is designed for you. So I hope you'll join us, and we are praying that this time in the book of Colossians will be a time where we all learn to love and savor Christ more.